Welcome back to the Source Garage. Sam here, and today we're going through grit guards like nobody ever has before. So I've got a collection of them here, as you can see, obviously. So I've got three really common grit guards that everyone probably knows. So the original grit guard, which you can see over here, the Detail Guards Dirt Lock, so the Cyclone style, the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap, and I've also got the Blue Honey, which I found on eBay and is this honeycomb style. So what we're going to be doing today is taking all these grit guards and, well, first I've broken them down on the whiteboard here, basically broken out all the features of them, measured dimensions, and we'll kind of go through the theory behind some of them and how they work a bit differently. And I'll kind of explain my hypothesis before we actually go through and do some tests with them. And the testing we're going to be doing involves all these different contaminants here in these clear buckets. So we're going to do a couple different things to really put them through their paces in every way that I can think of. So first, we're going to be putting them in the buckets, taking a set amount of these contaminants, dumping them in on top, and then pumping our mitt to see how we actually get them through the guards, to see how easy it is to get things through them. If it's actually going to fall through the crevices really easily, pump right through. If it's going to sit on something that has a lot of flat surface like this, that's the first test, so getting things through it. Next, once everything's settled on the bottom, we're going to see what we can actually stir back up by pumping the mitt. So like you would during your wash, you want things to stay in the bottom. That's the whole purpose of these. So let's see if we can't stir any of this stuff up with our pumping motion, try and bring it back through to see if things are being held down the way they should. Thirdly, we're going to be taking some of these and stacking them together just to see some weird combinations and see how they react, because I'm a little curious. I actually haven't done a test with that, so we'll see those together in real time. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is take some of these and not put them on the bottom of the bucket, but try and wedge them up a bit higher and see how that changes how the contaminants beneath them react. So maybe it's not ideal to have it right on the bottom. Maybe you want it kind of midway in the bucket. So any of that pumping motion doesn't actually transfer as much energy to the bottom of the bucket to disturb the sediment that's down there. So all different things that we're going to be trying today. I've got a whole bunch of different contaminants here that are mock contaminants, so to speak. So I've got these sands are probably my favorite right now. These float really well and kind of, well, not necessarily float entirely, but they sink back down. So these stir up really nicely. I've got microbeads. These will kind of act as our largest contaminants probably that you would see on a car, I would hope. I've got some rice here, which I know is bigger than anything that you would normally see on your car, but it moves well in the water and will give a good representation of how the water is flowing. We've also got some sequins here. These also work really well. They stir up. They're really easy to see. That'll help a lot. I'm not sure if I'm going to use the glitter or not. If the sand's not working the way I want it to, we may try the glitter, which is super fine and goes everywhere on everything forever. And then lastly, and probably the coolest part of this that I have not done yet actually, and we're going to see how this works. So I'm going to take some food coloring and basically create a smog on the bottom of here. Think like the fog on like a pond or a lake or something. We're going to see it sit at the bottom here, have the grit guard in here, and then pump the mitt and watch the food coloring flow with the water and kind of come back up through the mitt. I think it would be cool to see how the water actually moves underneath here. That if there was a perfect grit guard, we'd lay the food coloring down and absolutely nothing would move, right? It'd all stay under there. No contaminants would come back up. So that'll probably be the coolest experiment we go through here. So that's everything we're going to do today, and then we'll kind of have a conclusion, and I guess I'll hope to pick a definitive winner. I hope that one comes out ahead of the others. We'll go through obviously some pricing and availability on these and a little bit of the science behind how some of these actually work too. So first we're going to go through the whiteboard here. All right, so going through all of the physical features and some of the design differences between these. So we'll start with the original grit guard here. So I'm not using this for consideration right now because I don't think it's going to play that much of an impact on it. I will still do some tests with it and see if it actually makes a difference. For the purpose of this though, we're just going to focus on the base of the grit guard. So this is the design, as you can see, just circles overlaid with lines coming out from the center, and it has these big fins on the bottom here. So the fins are obviously in an X here. So the dimensions of all of these, so 10 3/8 inch diameter is the same across the board for all of them, with the exception being the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock is slightly bigger because of the tabs on the outside of it, but the actual dimension of the guard itself are still 10 3/8 inches, so it'll fit more snugly than some of these will because of that. So anyway, on for the Grit Guard. Like I said already, we have the fins on the bottom here is the side profile. This is the top profile. The filtering portion here, there's not really a whole lot to talk about because of the just simplicity of the design here. And the way that I believe this is supposed to be working to prevent contaminants from underneath from stirring up is, so if you look at it from the top here, you kind of see these 4 defined quadrants because of the big fins here. And so if I'm pumping the mitt, so if I'm pumping into the board like this, the force of the water is going straight through here and pushing onto the contaminants. And these fins are supposed to basically, I'll say, section it off so that you don't stir the forces in, I'll say, clockwise or counterclockwise here, and that we're not kind of scooping up the water maybe and bringing those contaminants back out of here. I do have some concerns about this with the lack of anything else but that if I push enough force down through here, these fins, that force is just going to hit the fins on either side and then right up the wall and still push back out of here. That's my theory at least. These slots here are 1/2 inch all the way around, obviously in varying widths as you get further away from the center. And the thickness of this is only 3/8 of an inch. So it is very thin, very porous, probably I'll say the most porous of all the ones we have here. Height-wise, so it is one of the taller ones because of the fins it sits on off of the bottom, so 2 9/16 inches is what I have it at. Honestly, my hopes are not super high for this. Watching in slow motion, I think there's too much space under here, or space in the screen itself, so we'll see if everything comes up through there. So on to the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock. So getting a close-up here so you can see the, I guess, I call it the Cyclone, even though the Chemical Guys one is called that, but that's what I think of when I see this pattern here. So all of these little channels here, I hope you can see that on camera, are actually, they kind of taper down to a point. It's like a triangle in each of these channels here. And then here's the bottom view, so obviously you can see there's holes around the bottom of all these channels here. And these are the little tabs on the side here. So they're all the way around it, so that help it fit more snugly into your bucket. And then, nicely on here too is these 3 like finger holes essentially. So if you wedge it down in there, you have to use these to really pull them out of there. But anyway, so the design on this, again, the same diameter across. The height, 2 11/16 inches tall, so slightly taller than the original Grit Guard. But so there's nothing underneath here though. So it is thick here at 1 1/4 inches what I measured it at, and then the rest of it's just open space under here. So there's nothing preventing everything around here from moving around, but there's a little bit of a science behind the way that this is actually forcing water through here. So I'll go into a bit more detail later on the Venturi effect and how funneling the water through all these little channels in here is actually making it much more difficult for things to come back up through here. It's actually creating a bit of I won't call it a suction necessarily, but maybe it's a low pressure point at this exact channel that's pulling things through, so a suction in a sense. That's the unique thing about this, using that Venturi effect. I'm not sure. So, the holes on the bottoms are 3/32 of an inch across. I measured them, so all the way around there's holes across the whole thing. The channels, again, are 1/2 inch wide, so same as the Grit Guard. I think that covers it. So this is the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock. Onto the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap. So one thing that I immediately notice about this one is the amount of flat surface on the top of it here. So obviously it's covered in a whole lot of holes, so I actually was curious. I said, how much of the space is actually flat? So 53.55% of the surface here is not actually a hole leading to the other side. If you want to know exactly how I calculated that, the small holes are 7/16 inch in diameter. There's 293 of them. These 4 large holes in the center are 10 10/16 of an inch in diameter. So you add those together, and this whole thing is 10/6/16 inch diameter, or 10 3/8 as I have written up there. And so I divided, obviously, to get the 53.55% that is flat space. So when you look at something like the original grit guard versus this, you can see there's nowhere for dirt to land on here, which is good for getting things through, harder, or not so good for getting things back out. On here though, I think there's probably gonna be more trouble getting stuff down into here. All these little holes at the bottom of these little points, so I measured these at 1/16 of an inch. The points themselves are 11/16 of an inch, and the diameter of these holes on here, I already said, are 7/16 of an inch, and it sits at 1 9/16 inch high. So this is actually the shortest of all of these. So you can see it is pretty thin. It's very low on the bottom. So I think this is gonna do really good once stuff is under here. Again, I think the Venturi effect plays a little bit of a part because we are starting with a larger hole. We're gonna be pushing the water through there to a fine point, and then things are gonna be stuck underneath here, and it's gonna be very hard for them to come back up, much like the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock. So I don't know how good it's gonna be getting stuff through it, but I think it's gonna be good at keeping things underneath it. So lastly, we have the Blue Honey. So this hexagon pattern here. So this is extremely similar to the original Grit Guard, except that it uses a hexagon pattern. The thickness of it, I believe, is the same. Yep, 3/8 of an inch. These hexagon are 10/16 of an inch. One unique thing I thought was the way you can grip this. So they put these holes in here for you to grip it and really pull it out if it ever got wedged in, which I think it's harder to do with these solid plastic ones than the Detail Guards that has the foam inserts on it. But it's a nice way to pull it out. But again, I think this is probably going to have the same problems as the original Grit Guard, that we can't rely on these fins to prevent stuff from coming back up if we're actually pumping the mitt up and down in here. One last thing I forgot to mention on the Detail Guards is, so this, the fins are kind of arched on both of these. So I'll see if I can show it on the camera here, that there's an arch to these. It's not completely flat. So it's kind of assuming the bottom of your bucket is, well, typically they're concave slightly, so that arch is supposed to contour to that, so they're not completely flat. But if it's concaving too much, right, there's too much curvature in here, now you have a gap under here, so again, you're gonna get that water flow underneath it. I'm not sure if that'll play a big part in it or not, but I hope with the dye test, we'll get to see more about that. So I think that covers everything on here. I guess I give a quick explanation of the Venturi effect, so I didn't think to draw this ahead of time. So basically what this is saying is, if you have a flow of some liquid or substance here, so this is coming through here, and you funnel it down to a point that is narrower than this, you have to now move much, much faster through this point. Because if I'm, just say, pumping a set quantity of water through here, and that force is still coming, that same quantity that's here has to go through here. So it has to speed up. And what this actually does is right here you will get a low pressure point. So we're sucking in, because this force is coming behind here that's pushing this concentration of liquid that's then funneling down to a point that's then being pulled further. So that's where the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock funnels things down to a point here, and same with the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap. So I think we're going to see some benefit from that push into this point here, and then it makes things that much harder for them to come back through. So we have these little points here where stuff can actually go through the Grit Guards, and it's going to be very hard for stuff to come back up because you have these big channels that are all basically blocking stuff from getting to the surface, and only these small points where stuff's actually coming through. And like I said, it's already going to have this high force coming through it, so I'm not sure how we're going to be able to push stuff through and then have it still come back up. So my guess is that these two are going to perform much better with keeping things underneath them than either of these that are just basically an open mesh. So that's my theory, at least. So now on to the testing portion. All right, so now it's time for the actual fun part of all of this. So what I'm going to do first is give you a little demo in this pint glass. So I'm going to take some of these contaminants and put them in here and show you what they do when you stir them up a bit. So I'm just going to take the camera. We're going to zoom in on this for a little demo of some of the contaminants. Then we're going to do the actual test in the full-size bucket here. And this will be the first time I actually see all of this done as well. So I could be completely wrong on everything I've just said here, and I thought I looked kind of smart doing. So we'll see with the testing and what actually happens. All right, so here's the pint glass zoomed in. I've put down some white paper that I'm going to use as well with the bucket, so that way we have an easier background to see stuff against. And I'm going to try and do that against the back of the bucket as well, so it just helps us see things better. So what I'm going to do now is just take some of these different contaminants and drop a little bit of them in here, and then I'll stir them up and we'll see what happens. So first, here's some of the sand I'm dripping on top. So you got to actually kind of knock it down in there. And I hope you can, there you can see those. So it floats on the top for a second until you knock it down in the water. Then you can see it falling there and collecting on the side. So that's some of the sand. Next, I'll put in a little bit of the sequins here. So again, I got to knock some of these down. You can see them falling in there. So these are going to look really great when we're trying to see how all this stuff is flowing back through these grit guards. So next I'm going to drop a couple of these little beads in here. So I'm going to use these dark blue ones, so that way we can make sure we see them. There they go, so you can see those resting on the bottom there. I'll throw a couple of these bigger beads in here just because, in case something does happen. So there's some larger beads. We'll put a few grains of rice in there. And then I'll stir it all up and we can see how it all moves around. There goes the rice. All right. So now we're going to use everyone's favorite tool when they need to find that lost nut or washer they dropped into the engine bay or beneath the battery, or wherever you lose stuff. So we're going to stir this up, and now you can see all of those contaminants moving around. So it's really easy to see. Like I said, the sequins are really nice. You can see those sand particles moving around in there. We can see the rice get stirred up. The beads at the bottom are not really moving much. Again, this isn't going to generate a lot of force, right? Because it's so thin, it's really small. But you can see all the other stuff that's moving around in here. So that's what we're going to be looking for. And that'll be our determination of how we're seeing stuff flow in and out of the grit guard. All right, so now on to the actual bucket test. All right, so really quickly here, I just want to show you the methodology for this first part of the test. So as you can see, the bucket here, so I've wrapped it in paper. We've got the original grit guard down in here. So the paper backing will help you see the contaminants better. So what I'm going to do before I pump the mitt on each of these is dump a set amount of contaminants into them. So I'm going to measure out an example of this right now. So let's see, let's use a ½ teaspoon here. This is the black sand. So I think we're going to use 2 of these. So that's the sand. Let's do the sequins. I'm going to do the same amount. Let's see what other colors we got here. I mean the green. Let's try the green. All right. All right, so we've got green sequins going in there. So those are the 2 I really care about the most. These are what's going to show up probably flowing around the best. We're going to put a pinch of these beads in there. not a ton because I really don't expect these to do a whole lot. Maybe I'll add some more if I see some more movement out of them. So here's the beads, and I'm already losing some. So we got some of those beads in there. I'm going to throw in just a couple of these large ones again. I'm pretty sure those are just going to fall straight down. And then we'll get some of the rice in here as well. All right, so now we're going to make sure we duplicate that. Maybe I'll change it a little bit if I see something weird go on here. So I'm going to take these contaminants, going to dump them in the bucket, kind of like mix them up in here, and then kind of spread them around like the whole bucket at once. And then I'm going to take the mitt and pump it up and down. Let's see, how about we do maybe 10 pumps, and that'll be good enough, and see what happens. All right, so let me check the focus real quick here, give you a little sample. So here's my stir stick. So we can see it down the bottom here. So right here, so it's right now about an inch into the top of the water. So you can pretty much see everything from top to bottom here. So we're going to dump it down in here. I'm going to pump the mitts, and we're going to see what happens. Oh, I probably should have shown you the mitt I'm going to use here. So this is the mitt. The reason I'm using this is it's very little low pile, so I think I can pretty much transfer most of the force in this really nice flat surface just straight down. So that's why I'm using this one. So here goes. I'm going to mix this up a little bit. I'm going to sprinkle it around the top here real quick. And then we're going to pump it up and down. All right, so that was 10 pumps, I believe, and seeing the concentration in one spot on the bottom here, but obviously there's still a ton of sequins floating around in here. I think I was kind of expecting that given how light they were. I see a good amount of them sitting on top of the grit guard still. Most things have made it to the bottom. So actually, while we're here, all right. Now I really got down in there. I don't know what actually happened because I can't see it, so I'm gonna have to check the camera footage and get back to you because I can't see it from up here. All right, so now I've let everything settle at the bottom here for just a minute, so everything is nice and piled up. Nothing's floating around still that I can see. Everything looks pretty settled. So what I'm going to do now is take the mitt, pump it up and down again, and see if we can disturb some stuff up and hopefully catch it coming back up through the screen here. I'm definitely seeing some of the rice came back up. A lot more sequins are back up again. I'm definitely seeing dirt particles floating around in here. or the sand particles. So, I mean, a lot of stuff's still on the bottom, but I think I stirred up a good amount of stuff too. Yeah, there's some rice back up again. I see more of the sand floating around. So there a lot of stuff came back up again. Obviously not the big things, but small particles, yeah, absolutely. I've definitely seen those back up again. So actually one last thing I want to try here is really zoomed in on the contaminants here in this corner and see how much we can stir those up. Oh, wow. Oh, all right, yeah, we're sucking up all kinds of stuff back through here. And I'm not being very violent either. Is it right as I pull my mitt off? Yeah, there's a ton of that suction. Even not if I put it all the way down. Wow. All right. So while I have the camera here right in the sweet spot on the bottom, it was kind of tough to get the focus right on the contaminants under here. So I've gone ahead and put the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap in. So I'm going to try the same thing. I haven't added any more contaminants. This is the exact same stuff that was just in there under the grit guard. And I'm also going to do this with the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock and the Blue Honey. And we're going to see what the grit underneath it just looks like, just to save myself some time and frustration trying to get this shot set up and make sure, I guess we're using the exact same contaminants for all these shots underneath here. So here we go. So the sequins are the only thing I'm seeing come up here. I'm really not even noticing that much, I'll say, sand coming up. I can see the stuff on the bottom kind of stirring as I push down, but I'm not seeing really anything come back up through the top. And I think that again is because of that Venturi effect and that small area on the end of these cones that is not allowing this stuff to come back up. I think the sequins are really the best gauge of the really lightest flow of water here because they're just so light and flat they get picked up by basically anything. But I'm not even seeing like the sand come back through. I didn't see a single, I'm not even seeing like the rice really stir that much. Like I see a little bounce as I pump here. So yeah, it's doing a good job of keeping things underneath it. All right, so now I'm gonna take this out. We're gonna throw in the Blue Honey next, and I'll do the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock. All right, so now the Blue Honey is in there, as you can obviously see by the blue tint. So what I'm gonna do now is the same thing. So I'll tilt the camera back here. So you can see there's the top of it. So we're really just looking right underneath it at the bottom here. So now I'm gonna pump again with these same contaminants and see what comes back through. Getting a lot of, okay, and it's moving around on me. So this one is not, this must be slightly off of the width of the bucket from the other ones. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of stuff come back through again. Well, it's jumping up and down on me too in here. Yeah, that rice is coming up still, even as it lifts up. All right, so yeah, it's doing the same thing as kind of the grit guard, especially if I press the mitt like flat and then lift up. Oh yeah, it just sucks up absolutely everything because I'm now creating that suction force there. And because it's such an open mesh, everything just comes right back through. It doesn't have the benefit of the like Cyclone Dirt Trap of having those really small holes to prevent so much stuff from coming back through. All right, so now I'm gonna put in the last one here. I'm gonna put in the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock, do the same thing, again, leaving the same contaminants. All right, so now let me tilt the camera back here a little so you can see. So the Detail Guard's Dirt Lock is in here. So we're looking again right beneath it at the same contaminants. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pump again and we're gonna see how the contaminants react. Wow, there's almost nothing. I'm trying to really push down here and see if I can get that same suction I did. I just cannot. It is not. Come on. Yeah, I'm looking on the camera too. I can't get it to move nearly as much. There's just not, because there's not enough, I guess there's not enough open space for the water to flow through here. I'm not getting enough area for things to come back up through here, or I guess potentially create enough downforce through these little holes that are in here. So the sequins are coming up just like the others, but absolutely no rice. I'm not seeing really any sand particles. Those are staying down, so I really don't think I'm stirring that much stuff up. This is keeping stuff under there really well. All right, on to the next thing. All right, so this is still in the same position. I've just got the same contaminants in the bottom here. So I'm gonna quick run through with the Detail Guards dirt lock here, trying to pump so you can see beyond just beneath it. I wanna make sure I give a fair shake to the different varieties here. So I'm gonna show pumping again, just now with a backed off view. So this is what I was seeing just a moment ago, that I can't really get, even if I start pumping a little harder here to try and get that suction, get that force down, and get it to come back up, I'm not getting anything to really come up but the sequins. And as you saw before, like even the rice and the dirt, or the sand on the bottom is just not budging. So this is doing a really good job of keeping everything on the bottom like it's supposed to. All right, so now I'm gonna swap this out for the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap, and we're gonna give that one a shot. I'm not gonna go throw the blue honey back in because that's gonna do the exact same thing as the Grit Guard, I'm certain. So I'm turning the camera back on here just so you can see that these 3 finger holes here in the middle, even with them, you can mash this thing really in there. So I'm having some trouble trying to free it there, but these finger holes are absolutely necessary. I'm guessing the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap is going to be really hard to pull out, so I'll film that too. All right, so now we have the Chemical Guys Cyclone Dirt Trap, so I'm going to make up another batch of contaminants here real quick. So ½ tablespoon black sand twice. Then we need sequins, ½ tablespoon of that. Then some beads. And lastly, the rice. All right, so we're batch of contaminants mixed up here. Get the mitt. And then, as we always do, spread the contaminants out. And then try and pump them down. This is looking about the same as the Detail Guards Dirt Lock. Once things are down and through it, don't think anything's coming back up as we saw before. Some of the rice is having trouble getting through the holes, but I'm not going to hold that against this because I'm not expecting you to be pulling rice-sized contaminants off of your car. I don't know what you've done if that's happening. Still pretty cloudy, yeah, so my expectations were too high for being able to filter and suck things down here. So, I believe we're done with all the basic testing now. I'm going to pull out the dirt trap here. Actually, real quick, well, I think I already know the answer to this. Is so if I throw in something like the Grit Guard on top of this, I mean, we're not going to see any movement, right? Everything is going to be still, because now we're so far away from being able to apply any force to the bottom. Yeah, I'm not seeing any movement on the bottom. There's very little stirring. Okay, so I think the dirt lock or the dirt trap do a great job at preventing the movement, keeping everything down. I think having two is probably redundant to stack two with one of those being the two. So I guess what I want to see now is let's put the blue honey and the grit guard together and see what that does. If two of these really porous screens can be stacked on top of each other, if that will actually be enough to, I'll say, hold the dirt down the same way we've seen the dirt trap and the dirt lock do. The grit guard and the the blue honey are not the best at keeping things down. Actually, this is probably going to be wedged in there really tight, of course. All right, that's not going to work. Let me get some pliers. Jeez. All right, do not push your Chemical Guy Cyclone dirt trap down. I think I broke the, yeah, I did. I cracked one of the inside of the middle cones trying to pull it out. You see it right there. Yeah. All right, so let's throw this in and then this in. And now we've got a whole lot of contaminants on the bottom because we've just been throwing stuff in there. So let's see if this still lets stuff flow back through it like they do individually. Well, I'm not seeing like any movement on the bottom as kind of expected, so. All right, so two of these together is enough. I would not use just one together, or not even together, just one by itself. So actually, let me pull this out. And let's just pump just the grit guard by itself on the bottom and see what that does. I'm gonna guess we're gonna see a ton of stuff come flying back up here. And there we go. Yeah, all right. Definitely do not take a mitt and push it flush against the bottom of your grit guard or really apply much downward force. Whee! All right. So that's enough of that. All right, so now we're testing the Detail Guard's dirt lock. Got another batch of contaminants mixed up here, so I'm going to do the same thing as before. Sprinkle this across the top, like so, and then pump it down to the bottom. So it looks like some of the dirt's starting to clump. It looks like we got a fly in here. Yeah, there's a fly. All right, so we have one bug casualty. So I cannot say no animals were harmed in the making of this video. Nobody tell PETA, please. All right, so anyway, we're not seeing a whole lot of great, I guess I'll call filtering to the bottom here. I guess I shouldn't have expected so much of I'll say the suction ability or the filtering ability to get all the dirt in the sequence to the bottom. It looks like it did a decent job now, but yeah, definitely not 100% perfect, but all right. All right, so just as a simple proof of concept here, keeping your guard off the bottom. So I'm just gonna literally hold this for sake of time. So if I'm keeping this higher off the ground and I'm now pumping my mitt, so, wow. So there's still a crap ton of stuff getting kicked up. That is crazy. All right, so I don't think the height is the difference maker. I really just think it's the porousness of the guard. Wow, okay. I really thought the height would be enough to keep it away, but I'm not even like, I know some people thrash their mid into the bucket to clean it off and shake it about. That kind of turbulence going through that porousness is really gonna stir stuff up. So yeah, the height doesn't make that much of a difference. It's more about the lack of the ability to get that force applied through and then allow stuff to come back up. So that's interesting. All right, so now we're on to the very last experiment I want to do, although, I mean, I think we've seen some pretty good demonstrations so far. So I'm going to take the dye here. We're just going to put a very small drop. That was cool. Into here, and let me get my pipettes. Push this back over a little bit. So we have a dark blue in here. Let me add one more, see if I can make that a little darker. I really want this as dark as possible so that way we can see it react or contrast as much as possible with the contaminants in here. That's better. That's pretty blue. Wish it would be like, that's blue. All right, let's make the other one orange then. Grab another pipette here. It's kind of clumped up. I guess it's from the concentrate. There's a bead in there. Beads everywhere. All right, so we got this blue, we got this orange. That orange is pretty light. What do you need?
I was trying to pull in.
Sorry, that was my roommate pulling into the garage here. So back to where we were. So we got the orange, we got the blue. I want to make this orange a little darker if I can. I don't know if this is actually going to make this any darker because I'm worried that it's not going to show up very well once because it is going to get diluted as soon as we start obviously pumping. It's going to dilute out, and so I need it to be a dark. That's just really light. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up. The blue, this should definitely show up better. So what I want to try and do here is, well, I think we'll do one with the original grit guard. I'm going to leave the contaminants in just because I don't think it's going to matter too much. If anything, it's going to help move the dye. So I'm going to very, 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 very slowly and carefully inject this dye into the bottom here of this bucket. So actually, let me move the bucket a little closer so you can see what I'm doing here. So let me come around to the front here to do this actually. So let's see what the orange looks like. I only really get one shot at this. All right, so we have some of the orange over here. Let me see how I can do the blue. So I can see a nice little cloud concentrate on the bottom here. I'm going to slowly go down and do the blue over here. That's looking good. All right. So now really quickly here, let me take the camera. I'm going to try and do this all at once here to get this shot as quick as I can before this stuff distorts everywhere. So, got the contaminants at the bottom. You can see the blue there. I'm going to grab the mitt here, and I'm going to pump it, and we're going to see how the dye disperses. All right, here we go. And you see all the blue coming up there. And now it's all gone. I hope that was cool for the 2 seconds it lasted. I'll have to go back and watch the footage in slow motion, see if I can pick out some of the motion a little better. Actually, it's not too murky. Let me see if we can try that again. So that was with the plain grit guard. Let me throw I'm going to throw the dirt lock in there and let's see what that looks like. I mean, this one is kind of, I don't know, I guess bland, that it's such an open mesh, it's just all going to come up. So now that we've got, I'm going to throw something in here with a bit more density to it. Although, I don't think my pipette is going to fit down through the slots. I'm going to have to kind of spray it down, I think. So let me empty these out real quick. Suck some of that back up. All right, let's try this again. So now, actually, let me see. Actually, let me try and mix them. If I put the blue and orange together, we should get a really dark color here, and maybe that'll show up better. Since I'm only going to get another shot at this. Man, there's just sequins on everything. All right, so I put a little bit of blue in the orange, and the orange and the blue. All right, so yeah, now we're getting a really nice, I don't know, greenish, dark greenish, bluish sludge. Yeah. All right, so this should show up really well. So let's see if I can do the same. Yeah, this is not gonna fit down through. All right, so I'm gonna try and squirt it out. You see that on camera? You can see that cloud down there. All right, the other one. Ooh. All right, so let's try this again. So maybe I'm going to try and go a little slower this time and see if we can get a better shot of it coming up. So I'm moving the mitt down, and the mitt's hit it, and now we see it sucked up. Oh wow, that really didn't come up a whole lot. I thought I would see like a shot. It kind of dispersed around the bottom. Huh. I mean, you can see the concentrate. I mean, it looked a bit darker on the bottom at first because I'm guessing, well, if it did its job the way we've seen it do before, where it keeps the contaminants at the bottom. So even the flow, as I push down, dispersed down and out. And then when I try and suck back up, it's only got those really tiny holes, so not a whole lot can get through, so the contaminants stay down. So I hope they look better on camera. Maybe I can really slow it down and show the initial pump where it dispersed around the bottom. All right, so that was the dye test. Let me, you know what, I'm gonna, just because I really want to see this again, I'm gonna take the clean bucket I have on the side here, I'm gonna fill it up, we're gonna throw the Detail Guards dirt lock in again, and then I'm gonna do the dye again, so on a completely clean bucket, and we'll see if we can get a better shot. All right, so now we have the Detail Guard's dirt lock back in there in a completely clean bucket. So I'm gonna do the same experiment. Hopefully it'll show up really nicely if we have a completely clean bucket here. It's the hope at least. So I'm going to, let me ring this mitt up real quick. So I set the mitt down and I'm going to empty out these pipettes. Let's suck up. All right, so I'm going to take these and hopefully you should be able to see it really well on camera now. Oh yeah. So I'm trying to go really slow so that just the force of the pipette doesn't actually cause it to start flowing up already. Back off here. And let's do the other side. All right, that looks good. All right, so throw the mitt on and let's see how these nice green blobs react. So stuff is coming up through now, but it took a second. And now we kind of see it all dispersed. That was interesting. So it actually shot up the sides first, so obviously there's a little gap between the edge. And then we did see some come up the middle, but not a whole lot, and not really in force. It may creep through. There's not really anything more to see here, but okay, I'll look back at that in slow motion, see if I can see something better there, and I'll try and slow it down for you guys and zoom in on it. But I believe that concludes all the tests for tonight. So now let me move this out of the way and we'll be on to conclusions. All right. So let's talk winners and losers and conclusions and things we've learned. First off, losers, myself. Sequins everywhere. I'm sure that my hair is probably glittering right now. There's just sequins in everything. I didn't think I used that many, but apparently I did because they are all over the garage floor. They're on my clothes on me. So yeah, definitely first loser myself for putting sequins everywhere. Thank God I did not use the glitter. That would only have been exponentially worse, I'm sure. Okay, beyond myself, so the grit guards. So I'll talk about the things we learned first, I guess. So learnings from this. So the mesh really makes these things not good at holding contaminants back. I mean, just look at all the space in there. The fins are not doing a great job of holding it together. The motion, especially the suction, just pulls everything right back through. That seems to be more important, is the ability to not allow stuff back through, at least in my opinion from what I've seen here. So the dirt guard and the dirt lock really did good jobs of not allowing stuff back through. As far as pushing stuff down, I mean, they were all relatively equal. I wouldn't call anything worse than another. I see a lot of rice still stuck here, so the rice wasn't helping this. But again, you should not have rice-sized objects on your car when you're scrubbing with a mitt, I would hope. So really, I'm not going to say, I would not recommend either of these two unless you at least stack them together. And even then, I would still prefer to have just one of these other two. And that brings me to even the grit guard, this scrubbing pad. I mean, this isn't going to help with anything. I mean, well, actually, you know what? I take that back. If this is sitting on top and you're scrubbing here, instead of applying that force on the bottom or like pushing your mitt up and down some, this will break up that force a bit. Still, if you do thrash your mitt in here, that stuff's going to come right back up. The porousness just does not lend itself to holding things down. So that would be helpful. Now, the reason these two won is, I think, going back to the original hypothesis here, is talking about the Venturi effect with that suction and the difficulty in things coming back up through here with the little slots on both of these. So maybe this didn't even play that much of a factor in the effectiveness of these, as much as just the limited ways that things could come back through. I really can't say for sure one way or another, except that these two were the better ones. Now, if I have to pick between these two, I mean, you saw me have to pull this thing out with pliers. That was not fun, and I did break it here, so I think I broke it both ways, actually, yeah. So I would definitely not wedge this thing down in there. This is not easy to get out. This thing is much better. It has actually little tabs. I don't think I mentioned in here, so I talked about the finger holes. There are tabs in here that allow you to grip it even better to pull it out, even though you can wedge it down in there more with the foam. And that's even another benefit of this over this, is the ability to sit down in there more. As one other thing I could talk about is the height difference. So the height didn't play that big of a factor. The perforated grit guard still, as soon as I started pumping with any force or consistency, these things started flowing right back through. So the height didn't play too much of a factor with that. So now, again, back to between these two, I think I'm going to have to go with the Detail Guards Dirt Lock. Just the ease of use of pulling it out, being able to put it in and fit it in better with these pads. I couldn't tell you definitively that it held the contaminants down better than the Dirt Trap did. I don't think we saw that in the videos, that these both did a great job of keeping the contaminants underneath, and then pushing them down. They both, I guess, seemed equally effective. Even with all the flat space on here, I didn't really see too much stuff like settle and nest on. It seemed if there was enough turbulence, maybe there was that suction force through all the little holes to actually pull things through. So maybe that was enough. But for just the ease of use, I think I'm going to have to go with the Dirt Lock here. That's really I'm gonna crown this guy the winner here. Best grit guard of at least these here. By itself, it would be a good standalone product. Don't have to stack it with anything. You will have to make sure your bucket's not too small because of these pads, which you could take off. But yeah, even if you do wedge it down, you at least have some grips to help you pull it out. So that's really it. I can't think. Let me see if I have any notes here to talk about. No, I think that covers it. Yeah, the Venturi effect between these two maybe helped pull it down. These kept stuff underneath them. These did not. The porous material let stuff through. I'm going to declare the Detail Guards Dirt Lock the winner and best of this test. And now what I'm going to do with all this information I've done here, so not only is in this video form for you to watch, so on our site, thesourcegarage.com, we're going to have a database of information on all the products we test. So this is just the first product. So I'm going to work with Greg, and we're going to make some kind of data table with all this information, all these graphics broken out, and hopefully better than my crappy hand drawings here. So all this information will be available. We'll have links to the videos and the tests here. So that way it's now a source of information for anyone to come and see what I've done here. I mean, we're all about learning and sharing. Like I said, this was my first time actually doing these tests. I experimented in like the little pint glass to see what would happen, but this was my first time watching all this happen in front of me. So this was pretty fun to learn and see as I went. Like and subscribe, please, and stay tuned for more of these tests. Check out the tire stand we're trying to sell. All this is just going towards funding more of these cool experiments. So if you watched the first video, you know I got a whole stack of wash mitts in there. We got bottles, we got sprayer heads, we got wheel cleaners, tire cleaners, rubber cleaners, wheel cleaning tools. All those tests are coming up, so please subscribe and stay tuned for all the stuff that we have going on. This has been fun. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and thanks if you stuck through the whole thing. See you next time.